Neighbor played both sides of the fence and paid the price. We live in an expensive state, and rents are sky high in our modest development, but we own our little home, which shares a fence with Jake's rented home. The first indication that Jake was not as nice as he appeared was the way he kept his backyard. He had an agreement with his landlord that he would mow the lawn, but instead allowed blackberry brambles to take over the area immediately next to our fence while keeping the rest of his yard under control. When I asked him about this, he claimed it was too expensive for him to hire workers to clear that area. Eventually, we did see workers removing the blackberries as Jake complained about the extra expense. Other times, I would overhear him taking to his next-door neighbor about us. Jake is very religious and we are not. He is born and raised in the US, and my husband is not. We could also tell he disapproved of what he erroneously called our lifestyle. He kept this under wrap the first couple of years, while he was still getting to know us. One day he let it slip that the fear that kept him awake at night was that his landlord would raise his rent since he was on a fixed income. This made me feel bad for the guy. Then a storm blew down all three sides of our old wood fence. The other neighbors agreed to pay part of the cost after seeing the estimates we produced. After we handed him a letter notifying him of our intention to replace the fence, Jake told us he would talk to his landlord about it. We were months away from a replacement, but in this part of the US, it rains several months of the year, and you only have a small window of time to dig post holes before it starts raining again. The workers who do this are booked well in advance for this reason. So, as the deadline approached, we kept checking back with Jake, first reminding him, then pleading for him to do so. And during the last month, persistently requesting his landlord's name and address so we could contact him directly. None of this worked. Jake kept delaying, and 2 weeks before the start of the work showed up during our family dinner to inspect the fence damage so he could report it to his landlord. I stupidly obliged and gave him a tour. On the day the workers arrived, I texted him we were assuming his landlord didn't mind the replacement because we had not heard a word from him. Then we got Jake's text explaining that he and his landlord found the fence aesthetically displeasing. We were also informed that the landlord would not be paying his half of the cost because he had not been notified in advance. By then, the fence had been completed. I was livid, but summoning the little restraint I had left, I knocked on Jake's door to ask how this had happened and why had he not given our estimates and letter to his landlord. And he lied to my face, saying we had never given him a letter or previous notification. As I was turning to leave after I told him how wrong this was, Jake dared to explain he couldn't let his landlord incur any additional expenses lest he decide to raise his rent. Over the next few sleepless nights, I plotted our revenge. First, I located the landlord's name and address on the internet. Second, I drafted a letter describing everything that had transpired in small claims court style, with screenshots of his texts going back 6 months, including the ones where Jake claimed that keeping the yard free of blackberries had drained his finances. The letter gave the landlord 3 options. If he hated the fence that much, he would not have to do anything because we were going to remove it by the end of the month. If he wanted to build a more beautiful fence after that, we would not oppose it, but we'd take out the $2,000 we had already spent from our half of the cost. If he could live with our ugly fence, he could give us a 1/3 of the cost, and we'd consider the matter resolved. I also asked the landlord to confirm he had named Jake his representative. We received a phone call no less than 2 days later from a very nice gentleman who wanted to send us a check for the 1/3 of the cost. He apologized, saying Jake had never told him about the fence until the day it was being built. Jake's landlord was also very disappointed to read the texts where Jake was taking credit for yard work that the landlord had been paying for. We stopped speaking to Jake for a long time after that, but recently heard from another neighbor that his rent had indeed been raised. Follow or subscribe.